Greetings, my Imagiteers. How are you all doing? Well, here's another one to add to the Final Fantasy VII pile. Final Fantasy VII was one of the biggest literal game changers in video game history. I remember it so well when it first came out. Everyone was talking about it. The characters, the music, the villain, the story especially was a big one. When I first played it, I loved the hell out of it. But I actually went backwards. I played the much more visually impressive Final Fantasy VIII before I played Final Fantasy VII, so yeah, slightly jarring. But I more than understood its importance because, well, look. Sure, the CGI is dated, but everything else isn't. Even those sweeping camera angles alone give it an epic feel, and everything just feels so alive. Still to this day, it's the biggest Final Fantasy out of all Final Fantasy games. Literally both the Lion King and the Frozen of this franchise. It had sequels, which were hit and miss. It had prequels, which are underrated. And this game isn't free of criticism. Big shock, I know. The Witch game is free of criticism. But this kind of criticism was interesting. It was either original trilogy Star Wars fans kind of love, or Star Wars prequel trilogy media kind of hate. The annoying thing is that neither perspective is necessarily wrong. Embellished perhaps, but not wrong. Which begs the question, was Final Fantasy VII that good to begin with, or were we just fooled by new and flashy stuff? Well, from my perspective, I still say the game is magnificent. The only real problems I have with it, personally, are nitpicks, and I'll also mention this before I go any further. I live in the PAL region. Back then, PAL region folk got games way later than NTSC folk. It was kind of harsh. We had to wait anywhere between 2 to 6 months after America got it. Kingdom Hearts 2, I remember there were YouTube videos about it, and I was still waiting to play the game. However, in exchange for that, our patience was usually rewarded, from slightly improved graphics to bug fixes to even improved translations. Down the track I'll show examples, by which I mean once I actually get a capture card for my old PS1. Let's just say that Sephiroth was a little more relatable in the PAL region, as well as a little more menacing. In fact, let's put it this way. NTSC Sephiroth, Darth Vader from Episode 4. PAL region Sephiroth, Darth Vader from Episode 5, Rogue One before Rogue One was a thing, and a touch of Cobb from Tales from Earthsea. I know it sounds like an extremely big comparison, but kind of the best way I can describe it. Though if I played the NTSC region's dialogue first, I probably would still be in love with the game, but maybe not as much as I am now. Now with all that said, let's dissect this frog. Here's the first thing that made Final Fantasy VII such a standout. A traditional role-playing video game set in a period like the modern day, not a medieval or mostly steampunk setting. Yeah, that alone gets people curious. Granted, there were some steampunk elements, but it wasn't the dominating style. Then we saw and played the intro.
You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
I was one of those people. You play as this man just called ex-soldier on a mission. You're given a brief introduction to the gameplay. Within the first few minutes, you can tell that it's engaging, fun, and easy to understand. After you feel like a badass taking down 2 military grunts with a giant sword after brushing off bullets to the face like they were nothing, it's hard not to feel smug. We're properly introduced to Cloud Strife, a mercenary working with this group known as Avalanche, led by Barrett Wallace, aka the obvious Mr. T homage meme. Then you're told to take down a reactor. Soon after that, you learn you're a damn eco-terrorist. But you're up against a company that is literally, and I mean literally, sucking the planet's life force away, using what's called the life stream as a power source. So right there, within the first hour, you get a huge sense of grey morality, and it's a constant throughout the game, but other morals were added along with the environmental importance message, and it could be surprisingly subtle at times, especially during the time period. The 90s was huge with environmental messages in their movies and TV shows, yet only a few were able to do it without shoving it down your throat. Final Fantasy VII took it in a very different direction. You are the terrorists. but doing it for the right reasons. It forced you to think, it forced you to analyze. As for those other morals, they included the power of friendship, the importance of accepting the truth as much as to tell and seek it. Not everyone in a giant evil corporation is evil. Stand up to evil, of course. Nature versus nurture. And another big one is the people you love aren't necessarily gone when they pass away. And boy, howdy, will we get into that one. Now let's talk about another big favorite, the characters. Oh, their personalities are as unique as their looks. Cloud Strife, stoic but good-hearted mercenary. Barrett Wallace, righteous leader of Avalanche with a gun for a hand, and he's also a father. Tifa Lockhart, a barmaid who can literally destroy a brick wall with her fists, and yes, her top heaviness is beyond memeable. But her personality and character arc resonated with so many. Then there is Aerith, the sweet and sassy flower girl with a mysterious past. She was also a white girl with a big butt before it was, or rather on the verge of being cool. Like I said, it was the 90s. Though that's not the first thing people remember about her. Oh, God. Moving on. Red 13, a talking dog lion thing with a tail that's always on fire. I know, it sounds weird, but trust me, not only is his character surprisingly deep, but he has one of the greatest moments in all of gaming, which leads back to the moral of seeking and accepting the truth. Yuffie Kisaragi, a selfish ninja girl who is a thief, but again for the right reasons. Kite Sith, or Ketchi, I'm still not sure. A cat on a stuffed Moogle that tells people their fortune. Vincent Valentine, the Alucard of Final Fantasy. Fun fact, the Hellsing manga came out that year too. Though Vincent here, again, sad miserable past, and an interesting character. Finally, Sid Highwind. Cross Neil Armstrong with Clint Eastwood and Popeye. You get this glorious piece of humanity. He's an astronaut who wields magic and a spear, while also lighting dynamite with his cigarette and throwing it at his enemies. Heart of gold, mouth like a sailor, one of my all-time favorite characters. Also, he's got the best theme. Finally, at least in terms of major characters, Sephiroth. One of the greatest villains, period. His design is great, his theme is great, his character is great, his backstory is tragic, and you can understand, even in some dark way, agree with why he does what he does. Except for that. That was a dick move. That was the dick move. Moving on. There are many other great characters in here, but that would take up the whole video easily. Next up, the story and plot. It starts as a ragtag team of good-intended eco-terrorists. I still can't believe I'm saying that. Their goal is to save the planet and take down an evil corporation. It then goes all the way to stop a man who pretty much became Satan. Hell, he's known as the One-Winged Angel for a reason. But in the midst of that, you learn who these characters are, why they do what they do, what they went through both during and before the game's main storyline, learning necessary life morals, and challenging themselves, physically and mentally. It's so much more potent when a lot of the setting is so dark and morbid, yet beautiful to behold. And when you do reach the genuinely wholesome places like Cosmo Canyon, you can't help but feel like it's a reward from life. As for the actual game elements, it's a great ATB system, action time battle. Anyone can use magic, thanks to these orbs known as materia, which again goes back to the story and explains why magic exists in this kind of world. You can cast lightning, fire, ice, all sorts of magic. You can cure people with it, bring people back from the brink of death, sadly not actual death. They also make you stronger in some way or add unique effects. Also, let's not forget that you can summon powerful beings to lay waste to your foes. From a giant bird known as chocobos, which are also a mode of transport, to an ice maiden, to a fire beast, to a lightning wizard, to a dragon king, to the knights of the friggin' round. Man, Final Fantasy VII just keeps screaming epic and backs it up with ease. Of course, the music is great. It's Nobuo Uematsu. He's a god emperor of video game music composition. In fact, some of his signature and biggest pieces came from here. Cloud's theme, aka the Overworld theme, Aerith's theme, and of course, the final boss theme. The masterpiece that is the One-Winged Angel. One underappreciated track I find, however, is aptly named Great Warrior, which is first played during Red 13's biggest moment. This holds a special place in my heart for a few personal reasons, though let's just say that it made me appreciate my father more. The ones who played it, or at least watched it, will more than understand. As one would expect with it being an RPG, the game is loaded with side quests, and each one has its own unique rewards. From a bunch of elixirs to the character's most powerful limit breaks and weapons, while also adding fun and or interesting tidbits to the story. So the way I keep gushing about this game, you'd think that there's nothing wrong with it, right? Well, I don't think there are problems, but as I said before, there are some things to nitpick. For starters, Red 13 again. It's clear that his race is intelligent enough to understand and speak human language. But what the hell is his race? It's not like Yoda where the mystery helps. He's like Chewbacca. We know Chewbacca's a Wookiee. Red 13? I still have no idea about his race, neither its origin or its name. I mean, I know according to Team 4-Star, he's a talking dog best friend, but I want an official term, damn it! Final Fantasy VII Remake? Do you have Part 2 to fix this one? Okay, there was a little bit of that in the mobile app game called Before Crisis, which, by the way, could have been an amazing anime. But even then, there's still questions left unanswered. Another one is... okay, I get that this was a reward for searching out the world, but Yuffie and Vincent are secret characters, not part of the main plot at all. Even though they're written to be part of the main plot. Even when I first played the game, that seemed really strange to me. Now again, it's addressed a little in the PS2 game Dirge of Cerberus, but come on, that was dumb. Final Fantasy VII Remake? Again, fix this one. Please. I mean, I know you're kind of apparently restarting the whole timeline, but you can still give us that. Alright, now this one actually did annoy me, and this one is actually to do with the gameplay. This is actually one of the common critiques which I really do agree with. Sometimes, the level 4 limit breaks weren't as good as some of the level 3s. Now yeah, you could argue that enemies need different tactics, but level 4 limit breaks should be your character's god mode. Cloud's Omnislash is hands down his greatest attack, perhaps the strongest attack in the game against a single opponent. But Yuffie's All Creation is less effective than her Doom of the Living ability. All Creation hits your enemies in one big hit. Doom of the Living, Yuffie will attack a single or random enemy 15 times, like Cloud's Omnislash, albeit not as strong. But what's more effective? One hit of 9,999 damage points to multiple opponents, or one opponent even, or 5 to 15 hits, which are worth 3,000 points each. The math, it works against it. Saddest part, this was an easy fix. Make these kinds of limit breaks go above the max damage cap. Finally, some story elements you needed to understand entirely do come from side quests. For example, there's a character named Zangan, Tifa's martial arts master. We only figure out what happened to him in a side quest involving getting Tifa's limit break. Now, you can chalk this up to traditional RPG elements, but sometimes they relied a little too heavily on that one there. Granted, not as heavily as Final Fantasy VIII, and especially not as heavily as Final Fantasy X, but it was enough to grind a gear or two. Or 3. That said, all those nitpicks were easily made up with just how engaging the game actually is, from the gameplay to the plot to the story and the character development. Then, there was one moment. The one which no one saw coming. A very tragic moment that royally screwed up so many people. I won't deny it. I had my first taste of bloodlust that day. It actually just hit me now. That's another big thing about this game. It had not 1, not 2, but 3 major twists you didn't see coming. One of them became the game's most famous moment, or rather, most infamous moment. Well, actually, just gaming in general, not just Final Fantasy. and so many hearts were destroyed. But again, it goes back to the moral of life after death. Some people love the hell out of this game, including yours truly. Others hated the hell out of it, and a third camp thinks it's okay. I think I can safely say that the vast majority of people who played this game love it. Hence why this is the first Final Fantasy game to get a full remake, kind of. And I don't mean a remaster like what happened with Final Fantasy IV, or graphic remasters like Final Fantasy X, 10, 2, and 12. But again, Final Fantasy Remake, apparently it's a sequel, or at the very least a reimagining. Not quite sure how to take it. But I will say that this Roche guy, who was not in the original game, I hope to see more of him. But that's another time. Right now, the floor is yours. Did you play the original Final Fantasy VII? If so, what were your thoughts? Did you like it or dislike it, love it or hate it? If so, why? Any particular moment that resonated with you? There's a few that always resonated with me, and one I'm genuinely not looking forward to in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hopefully it can be avoided if they're going to go the direction we think it's going. But then there's another one I am beyond excited for. Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please click that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe as well for more editorials, animations, and all sorts of fun content. But of course, make sure that bell is set to all, otherwise you won't get notified of our content. Trust me, our content is worth it because we make sure it's worth it. We love doing this too much. If you want to support this channel and help it grow, please consider our Patreon. $1 a month is more than enough, and the more who pledge, the more we can provide. This is Ozzyroth, signing off and thanking you. Remember, if you can imagine it, you can create it.